Postcolonial Dreams and the Reality of Ordinary Lives. And it features two amazing men who have very powerful life stories. Okay, for the sake of the recording, the title of this session is The Ruins and the Promise, Postcolonial Dreams and the Reality of Ordinary Lives. And it features two very powerful scholars whose lives are very interesting. Sorry, I'm not that good with pronouncing Yoruba names, so if in any way I murder your name, please forgive me. Um, Professor Akin is a Nigerian novelist, a scholar, essayist, and professor of comparative literature and cinema and media studies at Indiana University, Bloomington. He is the author of Roots in the Sky, Southside, and very interesting to this conversation, Postcolonial Artists and Global Aesthetics, The Age of White Rulers. Um, he has a very interesting life story. As a former journalist, he has seen a lot from the other side of the written word. Engaging episodes of his life range from his arrest during the Abacha regime to becoming a well-respected ambassador of our country and indeed continent, standing as a renowned literary scholar in the US of A. Also with us is Dr. Olumide Olutola, a writer and scholar whose fiction, like his research at the University of Alberta, where he teaches, centers on lives that rarely make the headlines, people at the edges of systems who, survive in silence, we can say. Dr. Olumide is a well-respected scholar who knows what it is, so to say, to shine the light on ordinary lives and to add that little extra touch that makes these lives extraordinary, at least to us readers. Together this evening, we're going to explore what becomes of the postcolonial dream when it meets the hard ground of lived experience, and how writers, scholars, and citizens continue to wrestle beauty and meaning from the ruins. And I think at the heart of our conversation is going to be our country, Nigeria, because that's what we want to center on. So, Nigeria and Africa and our heritage too. So the first question is to Professor Akinan. Please let me know how you want to be addressed so that I can address you. Um, the first question goes thus. Prof, you once said, my writing is an attempt to be an honest witness to my time, to the experience I have as a human being, as a Nigerian, and as an African. And this is a powerful declaration, one that bridges, art, politics, and survival. Could you take us back to what the honest witnessing has meant for you, especially given your own experience of detention during the Abacha years and your later movement into the US Academy? How have these personal histories shaped the urgency or tone to your writing? Okay. Uh, While we await to resolve whatever technical issue we have at his end, let's jump to Dr. Olumide. Dr. Olumide, nice to have you here. And congratulations on your beautiful book. You
Thank
describe
you.
your work as an effort to depict the human condition under oppressive structures, people who try to live ordinary lives and amid systemic forces. And this is something we know of intimately in our country, Nigeria. How much of that impulse comes from growing up in Nigeria, and how has your journey in Canada, both as a scholar and immigrant, complicated or deepened that vision, that what do you call it, that vision?
Thank you so much. I'm grateful to be here. Thank you to everybody who is on the call. As a matter of fact, I thought we were supposed to turn our videos on, so I was working on that, but apparently that Seems to be a requirement. But if
It is,
oh,
it is, it is. Let's see you, let's see you,
right.
let's see you. You're not
Yes,
excused.
I want to see your handsome faces too and the beautiful faces if ladies are here. Can you see me now?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I was hoping to come after Professor Adesokan, and don't worry about mispronouncing our names. It's okay. I'm trying to get yours correctly too. So he's one of the trailblazers amongst the people who I refer to as the third generation Nigerian writers. And it's a pleasure to share the platform with him and to rub minds with all of you. So going back to the question that growing up in Nigeria, I mean, I grew up in Nigeria. I did my bachelor's. Then after my bachelor's, I left in 2006. But growing up in Nigeria wasn't easy. Um, I grew up in the remote parts of Ondo State,
Mm,
and because my grandfather was I'll call him he was uh, traveling from one place to the other just for his company, and uh, and I grew up with very um, poor people, I call them, and but life was interesting. Despite the poverty, the abject poverty, the suffering, we still wanted to be happy. The kids, we
mm,
wanted to go out and play football. After coming back from school, we watched Atlanta 96. It was a great thing. USA 94, Tunisia 94, all of those memories. So I sat one day, how could I document all of them? Like it shouldn't just perish from the face of the earth. Some of these kids have grown up and we've gone several ways. And as you know, there's a Yoruba saying that 20 kids cannot play together for 20 years. So we've all
indeed.
gone our separate ways. But I wanted an opportunity to document those experiences that we shared and had, and also the way I was seeing Nigeria falling, okay, every day. I have
Mm,
studied the history of Nigeria from before 1914 until the present. And I can say confidently, I am not happy to say it, but things are not getting better. And the company in my story that I speak a lot about as the Ayika Oil Palm Company is a
yeah,
representation of a one-time prosperous company called Okitipupa Oil Palm Company. And it's also a representation of the Oluwa Glass Company, the first glass company in West Africa.
right.
And both of them died at the same time.
Mm,
For those of us who grew up and saw these companies, lived very close to them, and I just wanted people to see, to remember, even those who never knew about this company. So those were the experiences that shaped my perspective about that. And then the companies in the story, I also use them as a microcosm for Nigeria as a country.
right.
My
Mm-hmm.
focus is on Nigeria, and my experience as an immigrant here. Since you asked that, I live in Edmonton, the capital of Alberta, which is one of the provinces of Canada. And I see this is a province that doesn't have as much crude oil as we do in Nigeria, but what they have, they use it to benefit the lots of their people. And I thought to myself, oh, that company that I grew up knowing, the amount of oil we have in Nigeria, we don't have like a government-sponsored refineries, functioning. And this is a place that I live like many. So as an immigrant, you look at your country from the outside and you can understand that country even much better.
Yeah,
And that's what I try to capture in the story. But I was careful enough, and I'm still careful not to write that story or the novel as somebody that's writing from the outside. I
right.
wanted to write it from the within. So I have written it from the within, inserting myself within the country and the places like Lagos, Ayeka, and some of those fictional names in the story, but essentially is to capture the experiences and the suffering of the ordinary people who have been left behind, by the ruling elite and have been
Mhm.
disappointed based on the promise that was made to us before 1960.
Okay. I think most of this, and most of us, very sadly, I think a good number of us who are on this panel, or rather who are listening here, have are either in the diaspora or have had an idea of the diaspora, and it just calls to mind Larry Peters, the line from Larry Peters' poem "We've Come Home," where he says, um, "We've we've come home, and bearing everything, and eventually we come to that point where we ask, what does it cost to be loved and left
Mm,
alone?"
mm,
And basing, drawing up from this question or from these lines of Larry Peters, I think the question I want to ask next is, as someone who has straddled both worlds, you grew up in Nigeria, you have a rich history in it, and you're now living in Alberta, you have um, a new life there. What's the idea of the post-colonial? Because I think, if I'm not wrong, Canada also has its own post-colonial structure too.
mhm.
So, what's your idea of the post-colonial African you and the post-colonial Canadian you?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. So the history of Canada is different, completely different from Nigeria's. The journey of Canada towards independence was completely different. And then you have to study the history of Canada to see some of the atrocities that the I don't want to call them forebears, but um, the people who came, who brought the colonial rule into the country, did to the First Nations peoples, the indigenous peoples, that they met. And similar things happened in the United States as well. But as far as Nigeria is concerned, as far as Nigeria is concerned, we were not part of the movement to name our country. In fact, Flora Shaw, who gave the name to Nigeria, once, came to Canada too, in her journey. But when she wrote in the London Times, suggesting the name Niger area, as the nomenclature for the Mohammedans and heathen. It wasn't The meaning wasn't printed initially, and that is what has stuck, and that's what we continue, to bear. It's part of our identity. We cannot change that. But the colonial experience of Nigeria leading to the post-colonial structure eventually, to me, Nigeria is still a post-colonial project, but a failed one, sadly. Because we are a nation of disparate elements living together and trying to, cohere as a nation. The idea of nationhood here, is completely different. In Canada, Canada is a more of a melting pot. You have
Mm,
immigrants from different countries, diverse countries all over the world, coming into this country. Some of them, they may not be aware of the history, the dark history of the past of the country. Nonetheless, in the current dispensation, current time, Canada as a country tries as much as possible to take care of its citizens, take care of its people, and to make opportunities, available. I'm not saying that that's perfect, but in Nigeria, our post-colonial experience is not like that. We have the ruling elite in power, not thinking of the ordinary people who
mm,
actually contribute more to the prosperity of the country, but eat nothing, eat little or
mm,
nothing from that. That is the focus of my writing. Now, in the past, in the future, is to talk about the marginalized people, people who are, like you said earlier, who are often forgotten, who are not talked about. I want to, I like to draw attention to their story because I can't forget where I come from. Right? I grew up with these people. However wealthy I am, I'm not yet, but however wealthy I am, I
Don't
cannot
worry, we're not going
forget.
to tax you. You can, you don't need to hide it. We know.
So, however worthy I am, I just can't forget that because, as you know, your experiences shape you. So, Nigeria, I see it and I represent it in that novel as a failed post-colonial project. And I say that because I studied, like I said earlier, I studied history of Nigeria and people like Professor Adesokan. Also, I studied his works when I was writing my dissertation. People like the Professor Femi Osofisa, Professor Tayo Lafioye, Dr. Zede Babalola, the author of Salute to the Elephant. All these people taught me, and I learned a lot from them. Um, um, and they meant well in their own writings, talking about us then, the ordinary people growing up and talking about our return to democracy, hoping that things would change. And it was the same sentiment before independence. So I took my inspiration from Sefiata's Everything Good Will Come.
Mm.
When Enitan says at some point that I was born in the years of my country's independence and I saw how it raged against itself. What country did I fight for? Something like that. So that's it. That is, I saw how the country raged against itself. Like the promises, we were projected to be among the five biggest economies between 1960 and 1966. But in
Mhm.
1966, our country died. The project failed. And then the civil war ensued, and so on and so forth. I'm not critical of my country, Nigeria. No, I celebrate the people, celebrate the ordinary people, and that's what I try to use the novel for, to celebrate them, that despite the hardships, they still get up, go, to the market by their daily activities, and it's not worth over falling over the bridge. So yeah,
Okay,
but
thank you very much. Let me just get to Prof now.
okay.
Since time is well spent and this is a very short session, I would ask Prof a double-barreled question, after which I'll just do a very quick fire session with us just punchy one sentence questions. So, Prof, welcome. We are honored to have you here. Uh,
Is that me?
yes, Prof.
Okay, well,
Don't
sorry.
worry, I'm
I'm
not a
very
prof yet.
sorry.
I'm not talking about myself. I'll soon be a prof, but it's not me yet.
Okay.
Nice to have you here, sir.
All
You
right.
once said, I asked this question earlier when you were absent, but I'm going to repeat it now. You once said, my writing is an attempt to be an honest witness to my time, to the experience I have as a human being, as a Nigerian, as an African. And that is quite a powerful declaration, considering it is a statement that bridges several things together. It brings in your art, your politics, your survival as a journalist, as a writer. Could you take us back to what that honest witnessing has meant for you, especially given your own experience of detention during the Abacha years and your later movement into the US Academy? How have these personal stories, this history of yours, how has it shaped the urgency or tone of your writing and being?
Okay, well, thank you. And first, my sincere apologies for running late. I had to leave a meeting that's still ongoing. It's a very important
Ouch.
meeting, and I had to drive from that building to come to another building because it was in a different building. So I'm really very sorry. I usually try to keep to time, so please accept my apologies.
It's fine,
Um,
sir.
yeah, I'm very, very sorry, really. And in fact, I was texting with with a colleague that I had to leave because there was a Zoom event I had to be in Nigeria. So, well, thank you. So this was probably an interview that I gave maybe not long after my first novel came out
Mm-hmm.
in the mid 2000. So I guess that I was it's always been, as a writer, it's always been something that I've often thought about, that writing, being an intellectual, is a vocation. It's something that you commit to the
Yeah.
way people are priests or monks. It is not something I mean, and if you know the history of writing, writers, those who we call poets, have been the so-called unacknowledged legislators of the world. That is those who actually make the world run rather than those who are going to run the world.
Indeed.
So that has been something that I've really been passionate about. And the idea is that it is not the kind of mentality that you have when you are an economist or somebody who does politics, and that it is important for whoever has chosen to be a poet or pursue the writing vocation to be
Mm-hmm.
totally committed to that and not to make distinctions about this is my place as a Nigerian. I am Yoruba and nothing else concerns me. It is not that. It is that as a human being, and that's why the word human was in that quote that you just read, that it is because there's a reason you are here as an individual, as a human being, and you want to bear honest witness. Honest witness is as far as a human being goes. But what a writer wants to be is actually be a good writer. And there's never a settled way to think about both. So what I was interested in was that there's always this dimension, and I think that there's a bit of that going on in this panel. And to get writers to be witnesses in barely political and social terms. I think that yes, because we've sort of evolved from a society where that has been part of, when you think of people like Chinua Achebe, Senghor, that's how they pursue the literary vocation, and we cannot abandon that. But at the same time, as authors, we are also individual subjectivities. We are individuals of sensibilities, and our sensibilities are different. Okay, you as Sweden, we have never met before. I've been reading your work. I'm quite familiar with your poetry, and I know what you've been doing. I've never met Servio before, but I know. So, and I think that which pushes you to do that is actually more important than what you are as a Nigerian. And I think it's important to make that distinction. It does not mean that you are less committed to that society. In fact, it means that you are, but you've got to make that distinction that your vocation as a writer is really very important. And that's what I was trying to articulate in that sentence and in that passage that you read. I mean, it's a while now. I think maybe about 19 years ago, so it's quite a
Yes,
while. But
indeed.
I really wanted to make that distinction, and I think that it's important because it was resonant for you, that for you to be able to remember it and use it now. But I think I just want to make that distinction that the writing vocation, and it's people like Wole Soyinka and to a large extent Derek Walcott, the poet from the St. Lucia,
Oh,
who've
yes.
often made
Mm-hmm.
this kind of distinction. And I think that it's now helpful. I mean, Dr. Olutola is in Canada. I'm here. Okay, we are part of the world and we're still connected to Nigeria, but we are in here now because we are writers, not so much. I mean, you did not bring what's the name of the new current Senate president? Akpabio is not going to be here. And that's why we're here. And that's actually far more important than our identities as Nigerians or even as Africans, so to speak.
Okay, that
Yeah.
says a lot. I think it also says a lot to the fact that this is not a question, it's just a brief comment I would make
Okay.
before jumping to a quick fire and closing. I think it also says something to the fact that we often have writers who tend to go into the political arena,
Mm-hmm.
and when they go into the political arena, it's as if they lose that which they once held dear.
That's
We
right.
have people who are activists, and
Mm.
once they just become politicians, everything goes. I wouldn't want to mention names because it would be as if it's a political platform, so I
Yeah,
would rather
that's true.
not. But
Yes.
to because we do not have so much time, I'm just going to ask very quick fire questions. And what I hope we'll be able to get is one line or instinctive responses only. You don't need to think about it too much. Whatever comes to your mind first. And we'll start with you, Prof. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear the word ruin?
Ruin, in ruin, there's architecture. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah. Which
Dr.
is to say,
Lutola.
okay,
Okay,
that's
sorry,
all.
please go ahead.
Which
Go
is to
ahead.
say that
Mhm,
if something looks totally ruined, destroyed,
mhm.
it's a new beginning. Something else, something positive can develop from it.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
something close to the phoenix.
Yes, something like
That's
that. Yes.
well.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
well said and well put.
Yeah.
Dr. Lutola.
I align my response very closely to what Dr. Adeshokun has said, but I'll just add destruction, devastation.
Hmm.
So those are the words that come to my mind when I hear the word ruin.
And conversely, what comes to your mind when you hear promise?
Now, promise, I think that is commitment,
Hmm.
okay? A new beginning, uh, n- not so much of a new beginning, but hope for a new beginning,
Hmm.
and commitment to that hope.
Okay. Prof, what comes to your mind when you hear promise?
Possibilities of failure.
Hmm.
Yes. Promises are better made than kept. And I guess
True.
that that's why this whole uh, team, this panel is very important because those who led the so-called anti-colonial struggle were very genuine. They were genuinely committed to that. But you make a promise, you know, it's better made than kept. And I think that it is really important to give it to them, to people like Kwame Nkrumah, Lumumba, because these were truly committed people. But when you make a promise, you do not have the terms of keeping that promise. And I think that's what idealism is about, which is not to say that promises shouldn't be made, but should be made. And you do your best to keep them.
Okay, so do we have more ruin or promise in Nigeria in your estimation?
I think Nigeria, in fact, that's one point that I will actually sort of disagree with Dr. Lutola. In spite of everything, I
Mhm.
think Nigeria, I mean, when you look at the scale of what's going on in Nigeria, you want to give up. Okay. But it is not really, I mean, it may be a patchwork put together by Europeans who had purely economic interest to exploit our society and all of that. And then they
Mhm.
handed it over to people who were doing worse than that. But Nigeria is still a work in progress. And I believe, I mean, I don't always say believe because I hope really sincerely that it is possible and there's a lot that's been done. In fact, what Nigerians have done more, especially Nigerian thinkers, whether they're in the political realm, whether they're artists, whether they are religious people, is actually to advance the Nigerian idea, so to speak. So Nigerians have made more commitments to keeping that Nigerian society together than not. So what has always militated against us are two things: that there is always, an exploitative class in every society.
Mhm.
What Nigeria and other African countries have had to deal with in the last 200 years is an external imposition that does not respect the integrity of people who live in African societies. And they managed to put in place a series of classes of people who are doing worse than that. But it is actually important when you look at a country like Nigeria, look at Ghana. Okay, Ghana had bigger promise Nigeria in terms of the leadership, but it's been a while now. But the Nkrumah dream has not died in Ghana in spite of everything. And I think that although Nigeria did not have someone of Nkrumah to be our leader when we started out, the things that we've had are really far more important than having a leader. And I think that that's where our hope is. So I'm really hopeful about Nigeria in the long term, as I am about other African societies. But we have to keep working on that our possibilities. It's not done. It's not completed. Not everything has been thought.
And
Okay.
I agree with you, Prof. So not to
No,
say
no,
that.
no, Dr. Lutola, your own question is different. So we are not going to do parliament
Yes.
style of I
No, no,
concur.
no,
Yours
no,
is
I know.
separate.
I was just going to say that I agree with Prof 100%.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Okay,
because
so
I know he referenced me earlier,
mhm.
regarding one of some of the things I said when the panel began. No, my hope, my trust, my belief in Nigeria is strong, not in the system, but in the people. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so quick question in one sentence or less, if you can have anything less than a sentence. What is one book
Please.
that shaped your early idea of Nigeria, then Africa? So one book for Nigeria, one book for Africa.
Is that for me or for
Yes.
Prof?
No, for you.
It's difficult to say.
Okay.
It's difficult to pinpoint one book, but maybe I can select two. Like I said earlier, Everything Good Will Come by
Hmm.
Sefiata. I read this
Hmm.
book when I was doing my doctorate, right? You could imagine I had read first generation Nigerian novels when I was an undergrad in Nigeria. But reading that book, and this book may not be as famous as Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie's South of a Yellow Sun, which I also use in my dissertation. But Sefiata's Everything Good Will Come because of the resistance in it, written from the perspective of a woman, because I studied, postcolonial feminism too.
Hmm.
So I really encourage. I was impressed by the courage of the author and the way the complexity of the characters. But yeah, that's one book. And the in Africa as a whole, I think I probably would go for The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born. I think that book shaped my perspective about our struggle as an African nation to be
Hmm.
perfect, and yet we keep messing up. So, like Prof said earlier, we're still work in progress as a continent and then as a country.
Okay. So, Prof,
You
can
put
you
me on the
tell us?
spot.
That's fine. That's what all these questions are meant to do, because if you think it too much, then it loses its beauty.
Mm.
Prof, what is one song that always brings home to you wherever you are? And if you can give us one line of the chorus.
Oh, song?
Song, yes.
Okay.
Of course, for Raila Odinga, he used to say it was Harry Belafonte's Farewell Jamaica. So which
Oh,
one is
okay.
yours? Any song at all?
Okay, there's actually a song by Sikiru Ayinde Barrister, a
Hmm.
Fuji musician.
Indeed.
It was called Omo Nigeria, which
Okay.
which was an attempt to celebrate all Nigerians. Of course, he mostly celebrated Yoruba people because I mean, and then we say Hausa, Inankwana, Inagija, that's everything in North. Maybe you go as far as Kwara because that's where his patrons were, and then
Okay.
maybe we go to Edo because one of his patrons, maybe some kind of fans club, is also from there. But the reason I've always and I play it nearly every day. It's on my playlist. The reason I found it quite resonant was that it was released in 1977, and I was
Hmm.
walking the streets of Lagos, and as you know, in Nigeria, when you're in the street, music was always playing.
Indeed.
Okay, so and anytime I think about Nigeria, that song comes all the way to me, and it's I mean, I can sing a line in it now, and I mean, I don't know whether you may
Give us
because
the
it's in
line, no
Yoruba.
problem. No,
It's
it
it's
doesn't
it's
matter. I mean, music
it
is
begins
universal.
it begins by saying it's by singing gbogbo yín ni mo kí ní tìlé toko o ọmọ Nàìjíríà mo mà ń kí yín o ó bẹ̀rẹ̀ látorí Èkó Fẹ̀dírà Èkó ilé ọgbọ́n, meaning I'll start from Lagos, the federal capital. Èkó ilé ọrọ̀ Èkó ilé owó Èkó ilé ọlá lábẹ́ Adéyínká ọba wa kábíyèsí oyè ọba tó tó o. He started by praising the king of Lagos at the time, Oba Oyekan, who passed away, who ruled from 1965 to 2003. So that's
Ooh.
the song. And as I said, I play it every day. And I actually, if you want, if I have your email, I can send you a flash. I mean, I don't know whether you make sense of it, but it's a beautiful song. And I mean, it really sort of ties me to Lagos because, in 1977, I was about 10 years old.
Hmm.
And, I was really sort of soaking in things. I was trying to get a conscious of Lagos. I was walking the street a lot, and I'll be hearing the music, and I cannot play that song without remembering Lagos, especially the part of Lagos which was Ajegunle, where I was living
Hmm.
at the time, with my brothers. That is.
Well said, sir.
Yeah, yeah.
So, in coming to a conclusion, we'll start with you, since you're the one who just spoke. We've
Okay.
spoken about the ruins and the promise, postcolonial dreams and the reality of ordinary lives. And one of the key things that has been prominent in both your submissions is things are bad, but there's hope. And just in conclusion, I think the question would be, what gives you hope about Africa? Nigeria and Africa as a whole? And what is your parting comment to our nation in the context of this panel? So if it's something you can say in 2 minutes, since we have just about 5 minutes to close.
Mm. Okay, let me put it this way. There is two things. First, I think if you're a creative person, okay, if you know how to create work, whether you're a poet, a musician, a painter, or even a person who is creative in religious terms, you're driven by hope. You're trying to make up things that do not exist. That
Indeed.
personal desire, that desire for idealism, for wanting to create things that do not exist, is already an affirmation of possibilities of the fact that there's hope. So I think, I mean, there are writers who have dark visions, so to speak,
Mm,
who are
mm,
like, I mean, they just spoke about the man who won the Nobel Prize, and I was reading an interview with him a few days ago. That's the Hungarian writer Kranos. And but that darkness of vision is an affirmation of a desire for something better. When
mhm.
you look at genres like satire, something like A Modest Proposal by uh what's his name again? Modest Proposal.
Jonathan
Jonathan
Swift.
Swift, it is that he was so intensely angered by society that he went to the extreme. So the
Indeed.
artistic vision is always an attempt to affirm hope. And so that's one for especially and sometimes when I read stuff coming from Nigeria, I say, well, this is really possible in Nigeria. This is still possible in spite of everything. And so about that, I don't have any doubts that we'll continue to make progress and that things will and that writers, thinkers are actually our best people to invest hope in. For Africa in general, I would say that there's what we call reckoning,
Mm,
right? I mean, I when I gave the lecture note in Lagos, the at the Labaf last year, I did say that in ancient Egypt, that's in Kemet, monotheism was going to be, that is the belief in one God, whether it's Christianity, Islam, Judaism, was totally destroyed. The way pantheism or polytheism is destroyed now. But it took over 2,000 years for Paul, apostle, to resuscitate that. So in the darkest of times, the best things can still come. And and that's why, so there's a connection between both. That incurable hope of artists is what actually feeds uh, ideas that come back after 2,000 years. They may not always be positive, but that's how human beings and that's how societies and that's how nature sort of operates. And I think that in between both, that's where that's where the whole idea of hope is always animating and really very important to continue to invest in it.
thank you very much, sir.
Yeah.
Dr. Lutola, if you can give us your own summation.
I believe in the Nigerian people, like the ordinary people in particular, and I agree with Prof. 100%. Hope is what keeps driving us in that country to want a better tomorrow. I can see in the end of my novel, I'm not advertising my novel here, but it's a testament to my thinking. In the end
Mhm.
of my novel, you see this poor boy that has gone through a lot, have lost a lot and suffered tragedies, goes to school. See, because he believes in a better tomorrow. Excuse me, and that's what happens in our home country, uh, in Nigeria. People go to school because they believe in a better tomorrow. They want to work because they believe in a better tomorrow. Nigeria is not dead. Nigeria cannot die. We just need to continue to make the efforts to make it a better place for everybody. And that is where the work of the writer is. As a writer, you need to help the ordinary people, you need to help the people of the country to keep that hope alive by documenting it, by documenting the past. Even though you see most of the Nigerian novels that I am familiar with, there is no closure in the way we understand a closure. None of them has a closure. Like, okay, this is the end. No, like, Helen Habila's Waiting for an Angel, Chris Abani's Graceland, and so on and so forth. There is no closure. In Chris Abani's Graceland, you see Elvis wants to travel abroad, right? But there's no indication that he actually does, but he's not dead.
Indeed.
Lumba, same thing, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's just that leaving that possibility out there, and then we don't give up. That is how we as writers represent this resilience of the people of Nigeria who form the characters in our writings.
All right. Well said. Well captured. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you very much, Doc,
Thank
for
you.
your time. Thank you to everyone in our audience who has listened, everyone who has listened to us. We are about to start the next session. The link is already in the comment section. The title of that panel is Between Scar and Song, Writing Trauma, Migration, and Memory. And the panelists for it are Olajide Salahu, Adedayo Agarao, and it's moderated by Olaiton Junaid. Hopefully, we'll get to see you there. And please stay with us even as we continue the sessions. Thank you very much and have a very good evening.
Thank you. Josh, we will reach out to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. Good to see you.
You too, sir. Bye now.